All right. So here we are at the Mobile Crisis Response Podcast. My name is Zach with
My name's
Mariah.
Mariah. Oh, sorry.
Yes. See, we're already. This is our first show. We're just going to talk a little bit about mobile crisis response. So, what do you know about mobile crisis response, Mariah?
Well, I started out doing mobile crisis response as an intern, and what I first got of it was that it's literally responding to crises as they're happening. So it's not like after the fact of, oh,
Mm-hmm.
something happened and the kid is coming to see a crisis therapist. No, it's what's happening in the moment, what's happening that needs immediate attention.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not necessarily to try to, make sure that the kid is in trouble or make sure that they're punished for it. It's to just try to help them through what they're going through and to try to understand it.
Mm-hmm. And
it
then, find the resources to help them.
yeah, and the best course of action.
Mm-hmm. I kind of started the same way. I was an intern actually here at Leiden, and I was in the mobile crisis response department, and I kind of came to it the same way as an intern. But I found out it was really an interesting and helpful field to be in. It's I think you kind of said it's not responding to it after the fact. I think that's I remember when I first interviewed for this as an intern, my thought was, so are we going to be the people who go out, after something bad has happened somewhere and kind of set up mobile, counseling situations? No, we're actually going to, we'll get a call from the CARES line about a situation that's going on at a school right now. And we'll head out to that school. We'll talk to the client, the mom, the parents, all the people who are involved with the kid who might be having the crisis at that moment. And our goal is to talk to the kid and find out what's happening. But then, like Mariah and I talked about a moment ago, trying to find the services that kid needs to uh, begin to deal with any of the situations that have led to the crisis.
It's funny that you say that you thought that you would be setting up mobile therapy for the kids that are happening to be in crisis, because when I first heard about it, when I was interviewing, um I got the impression that we would be the crisis therapist after the fact. And
Okay.
so when they when I got hired and I started to learn more about the program and learn more about the department, I started to understand a little bit more about it. And it was just so fascinating to me. It was literally like, not as, gung ho as a fire department. When they get a call, they go out.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally my supervisor got the call and sends one of us out. And it happens so fast that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to gather all this information. You're trying to, piece together what's happening while going into action. It was just so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating watching how people just sprung into action to go handle something. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I started to see what it really was, you kind of have just a more respect for not only the people that are going out and responding to these calls, but the people that are making these calls. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's happening on the other side? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening? Who's with the kid that's going into crisis?
Yeah.
And how can they stay calm enough to realize that this is what needs to happen?
Yeah. And then I don't know. I always find there's kind of when you first get that call, there's kind of a bolt of adrenaline to an extent, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're initially kind of And a lot of times it always feels like your first call when that thing happens. Like, what's going to happen? Where am I going? What's the situation? But then it becomes like a real human experience in a lot of ways, right? Because a lot of times you get to the call and you realize, no matter what the age of the client, this might be the first time that day that they're talking about a really, really difficult thing that happened to them, or feelings that they've been having for a really long time that they've never felt comfortable telling to anyone, right?
Yeah,
And then, like, not only do you get that moment when you're talking with that client or that person, but like then like their family gets involved in it. Like, you're talking to mom and dad, or to brothers and sisters about what's happening. And for a lot of them, it's also they may have had ideas about something being a problem with the client was having, but they never understood like the full extent of what was actually going on. And just kind of being that person who gets to educate them, like give them a little psychoeducation about the situation, and helping them realize, yeah, this is scary, but there are options available and resources, and being that first person to actually hear from the client and the family these struggles they've been having, and giving them the resources to hopefully begin uh, finding solutions for themselves.
I agree. Because I think the one thing that people fail to realize, at least their first couple of times going out, is that it really does affect the parents a lot
Mm-hmm.
too. Yes, the kid is the one that's in crisis, but
Mm-hmm.
other people around them, and not really knowing that this was actually going on, that this was actually happening, that the kid
Yeah.
was actually going through this. And
Mm-hmm.
so kind of finding that all out simultaneously, and realizing, oh, they have to go to the hospital, oh, it's a
Yep.
different type of hospital,
Yeah.
oh, I did not even know that this was a problem for you. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just so all encompassing that you don't really realize how much it affects everybody else involved until you actually see the aftermath of it.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where we follow up too, right? Like,
Yeah.
after we do the immediate crisis call and assessment, then we offer follow-up services, which would be you know 90 days of follow-up therapy, where we continue to see, one of our therapists continues to see the client, who we assessed at the crisis. And I don't know about you, but one of the things I've always found really, really interesting about our job is how sometimes, like, you get to meet a person who's probably having, to that point, one of the worst days of their lives, right?
Yeah.
And then you might be assigned to them as their follow-up counselor too, so you get to meet them a couple of weeks later, 3 weeks later, and you can just tell how much change they've already been through. And you know you get to see them kind of at that moment that they're feeling like they're in one of the worst spots they've ever been in their lives, to that time 3 weeks or a month later where maybe they've been to a hospital
Yeah.
and they've gotten the intensive help they really needed at the time. And now, I mean, they still have things they want to work on, but they're in a much more calm place. You kind of get to meet this person right when they're starting to, like, really work on their mental health issues. And a lot of times there's a lot of hope, and it's really cool to see that transformation so quickly.
I agree. It's really amazing to see the kind of quick turnaround that they get.
Mm-hmm.
And just from that short experience that they went through, it was so life changing for them. It's a transition stage that they never really expected to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time, for a lot of our clients, it's the first time that somebody actually heard them and someone's
Mm-hmm.
actually trying to help them through something that they've probably been struggling for a while that nobody else
Yeah.
really realized.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to follow up with them with therapy, um, you get to see that and you kind of get to uncover where it all started. Some things
Mm-hmm.
that you're not going to be able to do when you're doing the actual crisis assessment, or sometimes not even in the hospital, because sometimes their experiences can be affected by um, other kids that are admitted into the same unit,
Mm-hmm.
or they may not connect with the program there, or they may see the point of it, but they're not ready to open up yet. And
Yep.
so they start to do that in therapy, or they start to see that maybe if I just had somebody one on one to talk to, this can help me a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Or
so
just
do
the
you ever?
fact that, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
No, I was just gonna
No,
say,
I was
like,
just
sometimes it's not even like the one-on-one. It's just the fact that, it takes a few. It's good. You have to give a person time. Like, they've been hiding. Or not, hiding might be the wrong word, but like trying to keep this thing buried for a while, whatever it is it's been bothering them or giving them some mental health issues. And you kind of said this, but they finally have people who, you can tell about. You can tell these people things, and we're going to help you and we'll listen to you, and not just assume that you're making it up, right? You're
exactly. I
lying.
don't. I can't count how many times a kid has literally told me, "Oh, you're thinking I'm making this up," or "Oh, you're not going to believe me if I tell you."
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of breaks your heart a little bit. It's like,
Definitely.
wow, you really think that, or people really don't believe you when you tell them these things, or this is probably why you haven't told anybody this.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that kind of brings me to why I wanted to do this in the first place. Like, yeah, I took a year off from doing mobile crisis response work, and I came back to it obviously because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And it it's one of those things where you never realize how rewarding of an experience it is until you leave it and you go somewhere else.
Yep.
And you really feel like you make a difference. And maybe small to other people, or maybe small to someone looking from the outside in, but to our clients and to their families, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that really does change the way that they live their lives and how they
Mm-hmm.
communicate with each other and how they move on from this experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of the same way. So, like, I started as an intern here at Leiden, and then I did the work as an intern through last summer, and then I had another job lined up, and I did that for about 2 months until, like, I heard that they were looking for a person back here, and like it took me a little while because I was kind of like in doing what to, and I was like, I just kept thinking about, oh wow, I forget how, you know you kind of it's kind of why I became a social worker in a way. Why I decided to go back to school and get my MSW is because I wanted to help people like right away and like
Yes.
have an impact right away. And I started doing just on call shifts during the weekend, like during the time I had left and got into my other job. And in that time, like I got a few calls, and like, you know, it it reminded me like, oh yeah, this is why this is what is so effective about this job, right? And how you immediately get to, help somebody who's in need, right? And, then there was an opening, and I was like, all right, would I be able to apply for that opening? And I came back. Like, I think I was gone for approximately 2 months, a little over 2 months, because my internship ended, and then I came back. But you're right. It's like you know, if you're a person who wants to make a career out of helping other people, this is definitely an amazing place to begin.
It really is, because you, like you said, you just feel that immediate sense of, wow, I'm really able to help this person even in this moment. Like, I'm getting them the help that they need right
Hmm.
now, and then someone's going to be able to follow up with them. So I'm that first point of contact. And
Yep.
sometimes that first point of contact may not always be the greatest. Obviously, the kids are in crisis, and so
Hmm.
you're going to get a whole lot of different reactions.
Yeah.
But you, like you said, following up with them later on, or hearing about their following up services later on and how they're
Hmm.
doing and how they're progressing, that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes
Yeah.
you want to go to work every day. That's what makes you want to keep doing what you're doing. Like, yes, it can
Yep.
tire you out. Yes, it is a lot, but the reward is so much greater than anything that you can think of that may possibly be negative.
Right. Like, and like I think sometimes like because we are kind of like, you know, like you kind of like we're not necessarily like the firefighter, the paramedics, or the police, but we do come out in situations that are, you know, challenging, mentally challenging
Yeah.
for everybody involved, right? And, you know, it can be scary for the parents and for the family, even the client, right? For the
Yeah.
teachers who might have, you know, the teachers and the school staff who, you know, had to decide to make the call, you know, it can be a really, you know, harrowing experience for everybody, right?
Oh,
So
for sure.
we kind of come out and, you know, in a sense, like hopefully we're bringing the calm, right? Like, because we're there to help, you know,
Yeah.
we're showing up, you know, kind of like mental health paramedics, right? You know, we're trying to find out quickly, you know, what led to this, like what can we do right away to help, and like, you know, not necessarily heal it right away, but
Right.
what can we do temporarily to get you to the help you need so that they can help begin that larger healing process, right?
Exactly. It's like the sense of, calm and togetherness that we bring to the situation helps to calm the situation down for the
Hmm.
time being, so that you can jump into action. You can figure out what's the next steps. And I think that if we go into the situation being, as nervous and scared and confused as they are, it makes it worse. And so
Yeah.
it's that mental stability that we have, and that mental light bulb that goes off in your head, like, okay, well, everything else doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is, what can we do to salvage this right now? Like, what
Yep.
can we do to get the help that this kid needs
Mhm.
right now?
Make sure they're safe, make sure that
Yeah.
they're healthy for you know, in general, and
And then make sure that everybody else involved is safe.
yeah, and that they understand like it's not just, you know, it's not just a decision that we're making lightly, particularly if we decide that we need to hospitalize, right? Like it's not something that we come to because, you know, we haven't really listened and thought about what the situation is, right?
Right.
Um,
Or any other possible options that could
yeah.
be helpful in this situation.
Hmm. And you know, it's a big job in a lot of ways, right? To figure out
Hmm.
all of this. And like it's usually anywhere from about an hour to 90 minutes that this all kind of takes place, right?
Yeah.
So you collect a lot of information and hopefully you're working from the right set of facts and, you know, information from all the different parties so that you can make a informed decision about, you know, what this client really needs right now, right?
Yeah.
So
And
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's
It's Go ahead.
But I think the scariest thing is that it happens so fast. And
Yeah.
the fact that, you're thinking, like, when you're putting yourself in the kid's shoes, it's like just an hour ago, I was having this crisis and I was going through all of these emotions and all of these different thoughts and feelings. And now I'm on my way to the hospital.
Yeah.
And it, it's just trying to get them to understand that that is the best option for them.
Hmm.
Is, I think it's hard on them, and it's also hard on us, like having to make such a big decision, or
Right.
having to, you know be responsible for that decision.
Yep. And
And
knowing that, in a sense, you are impacting somebody's life, not just for that moment, but probably for a very long time, if not forever, right?
yes, and just hoping that the decision that you're making impacts their life in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
mean, it may not be positive in the moment, but down the road, you hope that they can see it as being positive, and like a positive outcome in the long run.
Yep.
Like, if they didn't have this happen to them now, what would happen to them in a few years?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, for me, when I started working with adults, I kind of see, like, wow, what would have happened if this was taken care of when they were a kid, or when this
Right.
first started happening?
Right. And that's kind of like our ultimate goal, right? Is to, when there's a crisis that comes in, you know, we don't want to hospitalize. If there's a way to keep a kid from going to a hospital and finding an alternative treatment, whether it's individual sessions or like partial hospitalization or intensive outpatient uh, situations, and both of those are just alternatives to actually going inpatient at a hospital. We can go more into
Hmm.
those in a later episode, right?
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
but our goal, like, we're not there to send a kid to the hospital. Our goal is really to hopefully find out, well, maybe it's just a communication problem between, the client and mom and dad, you know, and it's something that, you know, maybe we can just give the very bare minimum of tools in that, 90 minutes that we're there to start the conversation, right? And we find
Right.
out the kid did just have a bad day, and this isn't something they haven't, they don't have a plan to hurt themselves or anyone else, right? You know,
Right.
they just need to be heard, you know? And I think sometimes those are the most fulfilling crisis calls, is when, you know, you're talking to the client and maybe mom and dad or family members there, and they realize, like, oh wow, this is a thing that's happening, and you know I just need to listen to my child when they're telling me this, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of the time you find out, you know most of the kids and most of the parents and most of the majority of the schools that we go to in different locations, but like the families are trying so hard, you know and they want the best for their kids. And we live in a difficult world, and that's the truth, right? That
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to see what's actually happening, even in our own families. And it's
Especially
not,
right now.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, yeah, you might be all around each other. You might be able to see a little bit more, but it's very hard to see what's going on in someone's head.
yep,
They and they may do a really good job of trying to keep that to themselves, or people are more concerned about, things that they can physically see, as opposed to the things that they can't physically see.
hmm,
And that's one thing that I really do love about doing these screenings, is that you can kind of uncover that really quickly.
Hmm.
And that, just figuring that out to start with, helps out so much more than you actually think it does,
Yep.
especially for these families.
Yeah, because a lot of the times, like a lot of the time, I found, you know, well, these families, and I think we kind of mentioned it earlier, though, is like this is something that whether they've acknowledged it, like actually acknowledged that it exists, they've known something's been going on for a while, right?
Right.
But they didn't know what it was or even how to approach it, right?
Right. I mean, because 9 times out of 10, the way that the kid is reacting to things, or, lashing out, is going to be the complete opposite of why they're lashing out or how they're feeling on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really going to know what's going on or what's happening. But
Yep.
these screenings kind of bring it all to forefront, and it all comes out in the open in a way that nobody really was expecting it to. But you're kind of just happy that they're finally able to talk it out, and they're finally able to voice their opinions and voice what's been going on with them.
Yep.
But I think it's something that we can definitely dive into in later episodes, is
Yeah.
just what happens on these different calls, and
Yeah.
how families can move forward.
Yeah. Definitely. So that's kind of how it is from I guess, a worker side. I mean, but generally, it's kind of like I guess, an outline of what happens is there's a organization called CARES that receives the call from the person who is reporting that there's a crisis situation. CARES then forwards that to the mobile crisis response team for that given area of the state. Um, we receive the call if it's at Leiden, and we would go out to really pretty much any location in our area. We'll go
A
to
house,
schools, houses, police
hospitals.
stations, hospitals. Um, so we're really out in the community doing a lot of work with people in your community who are coming into a mental health crisis, and trying to help them get in contact with the proper resources. So it usually, like we talked, it's usually about an hour, 90 minutes or so. We do the assessment. We determine what the need level is. I don't know if we specifically said what might happen. There are generally three outcomes that are going to happen. We'll deflect, which basically means we're going to offer individual counseling for the client. Um, there may be a more advanced issue, but the client isn't a threat to themselves or anyone else, and that would be kind of the PHP, or an intensive outpatient, and we'll talk more about that in a later episode. And then the hospitalization, and then that's when we've determined uh, the client might have an active plan. Maybe there has been a suicide attempt, or they do have kind of more intense mental health issues occurring that really need immediate intervention at a pretty intense level. Um, and that's when we'll recommend a hospitalization and set up transportation and stuff to get them to a hospital for that help.
And the important thing to remember is, with all of these outcomes, they are followed up by SAS services, meaning that
Yes.
they will be able to receive therapy once they complete their partial hospitalization, or once they complete their inpatient hospitalization.
Yep.
Um, Either way, they will get follow-up services for 90 days. And
Yes.
if determined necessary, they can get long-term therapy out of that too. But
Yeah.
our goal is to make sure that the immediate crisis is taken care of, and that we can continue to process that immediate crisis later on with the therapy that they're allowed.
So yeah, and then just to kind of wrap it up, what made you decide to go into like a counseling career, Mariah?
Well, funniest story, I have wanted to be a therapist since I was 10 years old, offering my advice and just a listening ear to all the kids in my day camp. And as I got older, I really started to understand that that's just kind of what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to help
Yeah,
people. I always wanted to um, offer some type of knowledge and some type of help to those who need it and those who need
yeah,
it most. And
yeah.
so I got my undergrad in psychology, um, with a minor in criminal justice. And then I went on to get my master's in forensic psychology. And that way I kind of learned the law and how it relates to psychology.
Hmm.
And you would be surprised how many different ways you can help people knowing both the law and psychology. And so when I did my internship, I figured out that that was the main way that I wanted to get started. And it was wonderful. And I was just thankful enough to find Leiden had an open position for what I had already been doing. And here I am.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool. I think you kind of took like a more traditional route to get here than I did, which is awesome in its own way, right? So like I started
Yeah.
out like I did my undergrad and you know, I think I was a pretty traditional college student. Like I had things I was interested in, but I wasn't really, you know, sold on any of them, you know? It, so I was a political science major. Not to like political science is a great major, but you know, it's really kind of general. Like you don't there isn't a lot of need out in society, you know, in general jobs for political
Right.
science majors, right? Not to say you shouldn't do it because it's probably one of the favorite things I've ever done in my life is because I did get a lot of ability to, you know, see things from different people's perspectives. Um,
Which is all about
and
psychology, anyways.
yeah, and like I learned like, you know, just to listen to people. That was kind of like what I got from that, from my education in political science. So initially I thought like, you know what, I've got this political science degree. I should do something to help people. So initially, I decided to try to get a master's in public administration. And what I found doing that was, you know, there are a lot of like numbers and stuff involved in public administration. And, you know, it's more the administration than the public, right? So uh, I ended up taking a detour. I didn't complete that master's degree, but I ended up going into customer service for too long, in my opinion. But uh, what I liked about customer service is like you're helping people, right? And
Hmm.
you know, a lot of times, like you would come into you would help somebody with in the moment that it's a problem for them, and it's really not necessarily a crisis, but it's making them angry, and you figure out a way to help them. Well, after a while doing that, I started to kind of get more like socially conscious and like thinking, you know, what if I was like actually helping people in like times when they really need help, right?
Right.
And that's when I decided to go back and get my master's in social work. Um, and it's probably one of the most awesome decisions I've ever made in my life, honestly. Um, and I think one of the things about social work is a lot of people, they think social workers are the people from the state who come and take your kid, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually so much more than that. You know, it's anything from, you know, counseling people, you know, in moments where you know they're in crisis, like Mariah and I do now, or you know, helping people like figure out, you know, resources that are available for them when they're in their times of need, right? you know, and trying to help people get back on their feet, you know, whether it's financially or mentally or just in general, right? Being there as a resource and getting people back to a place where they can, you know, be a productive person again, right? So,
I definitely agree.
so I mean, I feel like, you know, in a long way, it took me a while to get here, but I've definitely found the thing that, you know, enjoy the most. I'm not saying there aren't days where you kind of come home and like you might have seen 100 things that just make you feel upset, but then like you get that one moment where, you know, everything clicks the way it's supposed to. You offer that, you get the help to the kid who needs it right at that moment.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh yeah, that's why I'm here. This is why I'm doing this. And it's amazing.
And I think the greatest thing about people in our field is that we want to be here. We want
Mm-hmm.
to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what really drives it home. And that's what really helps people is that we are here because we want to help. And this is what we're passionate about. And if we're passionate about it, we can put more effort into it and we can actually make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a career podcast, but at the same time, like if you're out there and you're like just wondering like, well, what can I do to help my community? I mean, you know, reach out to Leiden. Like we've got a lot of different resources, and you know, I don't want to speak for my director, but I'm sure she'd be happy to, you know, find out if there are people who wanted to volunteer and help us, right?
Of
So,
course.
but you know, reach out to us, and you know, I'm not saying we always have things to do, but we definitely, you know, would be happy to, you know, find out, you know, what you might want to do to help. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's about it for today, right, Mariah? I don't know what else to
Yeah.
talk about. We kind
Yeah. I
of
feel
went
like
through a
we
lot
could go on
really fast.
forever.
I know.
Oh, for
I mean, I
sure.
feel like we could. I mean, that's just like the truth is like that's just kind of the top of like what we do. I mean, I think the reason we both do this is because we find it so interesting and, you know, fulfilling in a lot of ways, right?
Yes. And
So
no day is ever the same.
not at all. Like, you know, some days can be really quiet where like you're in a sense you're happy at that point because it means, well, everybody must be doing okay today. And then other
Exactly.
days, you know, it's back to back to back crisis is coming up. Which at the same time, like while you're in it, you're kind of like you feel like you're on a treadmill. But at the end of those days, like I feel like those really busy days, when I get done and I've talked to like 5 or 6 different groups of people, you know,
I'm energized.
right? Like you feel like, oh wow, I did the work today, you know, like I really helped. So anyway. So not that I want people to go into crisis, but you know, just
No, no.
if you do, we're here to help. So
Well
that's
said.
what we do. So all right.
Until next
That's the
time.
end. Yes, until next time, which might be next week. We're not sure what our schedule is yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, this was our first episode, so if we rambled a bit or sounded unprepared, maybe we
Let us
were, and
know.
maybe, you know. So, all right. All right, Mariah. Until next time
All
on
right,
the
Zach.
Mobile Crisis Response Podcast. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.